Hello, folks. Welcome to the Two Stewards Show. As always, I'm your host, Mark, and I'm here with my other host, Brent.
Hello, Mark.
And today we have modeling the voice of ChatGPT, Gideon. Welcome, Gideon.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here. Hello, Mark.
Hi.
You sound like an algorithm, so that's good.
So, if you didn't hear, Bitcoin broke past the $100,000 US price barrier.
This is our form
recently.
of a party to celebrate.
Yeah.
We've got all the books on the table. We're reading them.
Rereading them. As we'll talk about, it's not all about the price, but it's a good indicator. And so we thought, how do we explain this? Because we've had a number of viewers kind of ask us, like, I've heard you guys talking about Bitcoin, but I still don't really get
There's some skeptics out there, Mark.
As there should be.
Yeah.
That's what if there's one thing.
We're fostering skepticism in our entire audience.
If there's one thing people take away from our show, it's be a skeptic.
Oh, boy.
I don't know. There's other things. But anyways, no, we thought we would just what are some of the basic questions? And because we're so,
Advanced.
not advanced.
Yeah, Mark's in a different world.
No, but we are immersed in the Bitcoin, I don't know, culture, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
World.
But we talk about it a lot. We've researched it a lot, and sometimes you can kind of lose view of, the basic questions, right? So we thought we would get some basic questions, and we went to ChatGPT to ask these questions. And then we thought, let's get Gideon to humanize this a little bit, and we can have a synchronization of AI and the person, right?
Very good.
A little bit of maybe transhumanism. That's for another episode.
That's the next time, yeah.
That's the next time. The integration of the body and AI. Anyways, so Gideon, you have some... some questions?
Let's jump into things. So I'm just going to ask these guys some questions to understand more what is Bitcoin and get back to the basics of it. So let's just start with the question, what is a Bitcoin? So that should be
what do you mean by that, though?
So you guys talk a lot about the problems with our fiat system and how inflation is happening and we can't stop it and the government needs to keep printing money and it sounds like this chaos thing that's just going to keep going and falling apart. And then you say, Bitcoin, this, it's a solution and...
Bitcoin solves that.
Yeah. But so say
we don't explain it.
I'm afraid of our fiat system and I want to get out of it. I want to get some Bitcoin, but what am I actually getting? I go on this app, I buy some Bitcoin. What, I look at my screen, it says I have some, but what do I even have,
Yeah, so the first thing you got to do is go to bullbitcoin.ca, and I think we'll have a link. Maybe we'll do a link in our show notes.
Just plug immediately. Okay.
If you use our affiliate link, we get paid a little tiny bit, so do that.
And you get free Bitcoin too. So.
Yeah, and you get some, we get some. It's all good. But no, it's a good spot to get it.
But
what is a
you
Bitcoin?
Getting? Yeah, what are you?
Okay, well, you are getting, a part of a cryptographic ledger that is going to be the basis for our future monetary system. Does that explain it
so that
pretty
clears
clearly?
that up.
Next question.
It's also a finite ledger. There's a finite.
So what is a cryptographic ledger?
I'm just trying to be funny. That's not a good explanation at all. But yeah, you're probably not going to buy an entire Bitcoin because as we just established, they're just cracked the 100K price. But you could, if you have the funds at your disposal. Mm-hmm. But yeah, what is a Bitcoin? So how does it work? What's the best way to approach this, Brent?
So it's Bitcoin is an invention that it basically an engineered monetary technology. So people for as long as human history have been trying to find ways to create money or find ways to store their value, right? So we talked about that. We talked about the Bitcoin Standard Book. Some of the previous monies in history, people have chosen beads, shells, rocks, gold, whatever it may be.
The gold is a familiar one.
Gold is a familiar, yeah. But even salt, cattle, whatever. Yeah. So people look for things. It's okay, I want to store my value into the future. I'm going to look for something that will be a good way to do that, right? If I buy this object my value will be preserved. So what's interesting is that in the modern world, in the digital world, where we have the internet, people have been trying to create internet native or digital money, right? So does that make sense? Just as
internet native, you just mean it's on the it's on
yeah,
the internet.
like it's not a physical thing that you can go dig out of the ground. It's actually born online. Like it's
so Bitcoin is a fully digital form of money that was created.
Yeah. So it's engineered.
It's not a physical chunk of gold. It's actually on a computer.
Yeah,
so,
and it's not a stock. It's not like you own a digital representation of a physical company or a physical monetary. Like it's not like there's a big pile of gold and then a Bitcoin is like 1 ounce of gold or whatever, right?
So it's not like someone's holding a bunch of Bitcoin and then they give you
So but then the trick is, okay, in the digital world, you think about what's really important with money. What's really important with money is that you can't easily produce it. So gold, what makes it so valuable is like it's so incredibly hard to mine, and it has this scarcity built into it, right? So it's a good store of value. Like if I'm going to own something for 30 years and I want it to maintain its value, I want to make sure that it's scarce, that nobody can just go and find a big stockpile of it, and now all of a sudden mine's worth less.
And it won't deteriorate.
And it won't deteriorate.
Doesn't do.
So, but in the digital world, how easy is it to go Control C, Control V, right? Like you just copy and paste these pieces of code on a programming language, right? Like once you go into the digital world, it's so easy to duplicate and
can I just point out, people talk about
what if I say no?
I'm gonna anyways. You know how this goes. No, I mean, you start talking about it's digital, like, I don't know, I just give me like a good old $20 bill. Like our money is digital. All of it, like the money that we use, it's all digital. It's created digitally. The $20 bill is just a representation of that. Like you know that yourself. $100 bill has no more value physically than a $20 bill.
People talk about that. Like
it's just
you look at a dollar bill and you go like, what even? This doesn't have anything. Like I could just rip it in half and it's not worth anything.
Exactly. I mean, maybe a loonie is still not worth $1 in the metal that it's in. But it's a representation. So we already live in that world. We already live in a digital money world. When the money is created, it's not like they do print money at the mint. But that's
a
not,
small fraction.
That's
like
just
the
a
physical
representation of the money that has been created. That's not the act of actually creating money, right? Money's created by loans.
How is
government.
Bitcoin created? Like, so someone's out there printing like Canadian and US dollars, and that's a big problem. But how do we know that someone's not out there just printing Bitcoin?
It's a problem because there's no correlation between the amount of dollars and the amount of labor.
Okay.
Right? If you think of money as storing the value of your time and labor, so you go work and then you need a way to store that value so that you don't
you don't have to immediately consume it right away, right?
Brent makes has chickens and they lay eggs, and I grow wheat so we can trade. But at some point, I lose the value of that wheat because he only needs so much, and then I can store it, and I can store it for a little while, but eventually it's going to go bad. So we need some intermediary where I can get rid of all my wheat all over the place, and he can get rid of all his eggs all over the place, and we can trade between ourselves, but all that excess goes to other people. And like, this is why money came about, right? You need some sort of intermediary.
Yeah, because you can hold on to gold for as long as you want, and it's still going to hold value, and you can go buy wheat if you need, or you can buy anything.
Exactly.
Right?
And it's not that gold itself has that intrinsic value. Like, it has some intrinsic value for industrial applications, and you could even say for jewelry, but that's only because people like it because it's shiny and whatever.
Right.
But other than that, it has no intrinsic value other than it lasts and it's scarce. That's really the value of gold.
It holds the properties that holds the properties of sound money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so then, Bitcoin does that in a digital format. We've moved to a digital world, right? Everything's like the internet, the protocols that make up the internet, they run our world. And if the internet goes down, like everything stops,
Yeah.
right? We've had some like phone, Rogers went down or Bell went down for a couple of days, and everybody just loses their mind, right? Like everything grinds to a halt, and people are looting and shooting. Okay, maybe not that bad.
Okay, so this is
I can't text my friends.
But the point is, we live in a digital world,
yeah.
and like without it, we're taking like generational steps back.
And what you're
if we
saying,
lost that.
we don't have a good solution for digital money.
So this is a big jump though, because if I buy gold, like gold has been a good form of money. Like people have been holding gold for thousands of years. Like it's reliable. Like how do I know if I go buy Bitcoin, it's not just gonna like,
Yeah,
I don't know. It's digital. It's not, I can't hold it. How do I know even what it is? Like,
and can you lose it? Is it just a fad?
Gold's issue is its portability mainly, right? So I think gold works really well as money, but as the world gets more interconnected and global,
And
basically
more specialized.
gold is so heavy, large, precious. Like to send it around the world, you have a massive transaction cost, a massive expense. So to do settlement in gold, settlement meaning like I want to send money to Mark and I want Mark to get the money and the transaction to be over. But imagine we're countries, like he's China. You China? Yeah. And then I'll be the US or something. Yeah. So I'm sending him like $1 trillion and it's on a boat, and then like Russia comes and it's like, oh, I'm just going to sink that boat. Right. Like the transaction.
Or it sinks, like the Spanish galleons I love to talk about.
I've heard
Like
of
they
this.
just, like the money is literally at
So
risk.
it's difficult to get it around.
Yeah.
is the
So
problem.
what
And
happens?
it costs you money it costs you a large portion of that money
It's a
to actually
transaction,
send
get
it.
it
Yeah.
around. Okay.
So now what happens is it has to centralize, right? So gold's great money, but you have to centralize it in order to function in a digital world and a modern world, right? So now you got all the gold sitting in these central banks, and they issue coupons or debt on those. And that's what we use, or we used, until they broke the link between the money and gold. But that's the problem with gold, why it doesn't scale in the modern world. And I think history has kind of shown us, like for the last 50 years, we haven't used gold as a standard to back our money, right? And we've been living in this like fiat no man's land for 50 years, building our culture upon like money created out of thin air.
So you're saying like Bitcoin is the next step forward, like it's going to solve the problem that is
Yeah, 'cause
difficult to
and not
We
translate.
tried it with gold,
Yeah.
and it didn't work.
Right.
Like it still works in the fact, like if you have an ounce of gold or whatever, like that holds value, and that's good. You can store value that way, and eventually you
It
can
doesn't scale
exchange it.
though.
But the trick
It
is
doesn't scale.
Yeah, the
Okay.
trick is
When you scale it, we screw it up,
Yeah.
as we did in 1970.
And part of the reason why we screw it up is because it's centralized, and you have to trust the guy who's literally holding, like you have to trust the central bank.
There's always going to be a third
Right?
party that's actually holding the
Yeah.
gold.
So there's a guy out there, and he's got all the gold, and he says,
I don't trust that guy.
Yeah, he
right?
says it's like your money has value because you can come anytime and get your gold, but it's like no. Now you have to trust him, right? So what
Well,
Bitcoin
that's
is?
the golden rule, right? He who has the gold makes the rules.
So
Yeah.
who am I trusting with Bitcoin then?
So with Bitcoin, what Bitcoin
Exactly.
was an exercise in, can we make a digitally native money, like so one that's built like based on code on the internet,
Okay.
right?
We'll
so
have to
for
go
the
into
modern
that.
world,
That sounds
yeah,
confusing.
but that
Well, it's trustless.
that you do not have to trust a third party to intermediate the transaction.
I'm reading
So-
on your thing here a peer-to-peer
Yeah.
system.
So if you pull up the Bitcoin white paper, this is like kind of the constitution of Bitcoin, or like the original guy who made it, Satoshi Nakamoto, kind of came up with a 9-page white paper. Just goes through like, how does this actually work? So if you actually want to read what it is, and like you just read the white paper, it's 9 pages long, and
We'll
it's
link
mostly,
it. We'll link it below
yeah.
for people.
So, but he says a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So peer-to-peer meaning like me to Mark to Gideon, like
Yeah.
directly without
It's not
any,
peer to bank to peer. It's directly.
and it's not peer-to-peer with trusting a bank in between, right? So
Right.
like that was the problem they were trying to solve with this exercise called Bitcoin.
okay. Did they solve it?
Well, yeah. So
As far as we know.
let me just get a little bit, I don't know, maybe this is too technical, but they talk about the blockchain trilemma.
Yeah.
So you know what a dilemma is, and dilemma is like, di means two in Greek, right? Prefix. Tri means three. So the challenge was security, scalability, and decentralization. And so these are maybe big words, whatever, but
Yeah, you
like
lost me.
security. Well, this is like, if you want to create a better money, it should be all three of these things. And we've never been able to do that, right? Security, we get that. Like, it's secure, you can't make more.
Yep.
Or, in the case of gold, you can mine more, but it's a pretty consistent rate.
Yeah.
You can't just add 50% to the gold supply, right?
Like they can with dollars, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. 2% a year, let's say. So scalability, right? And so we just talked about the problem of scalability with gold, right?
Okay.
So making it work like worldwide. So you and me can trade gold, and that's fine, but I can't trade, if I'm in China, like Brent said, sending it to the US, that's a problem. And so we tried having like the US hold the gold and issue dollars as a representation. That all got screwed up, and it will get screwed up every single time you centralize it. And so it's part of the scalability, but also the decentralization. So the decentralization is another one, right? We've never really been able to decentralize, even with the money that we have now. It's centralized.
So we should talk about a
bank.
ledger in the
Yeah, so I'll just say that trilemma, that issue, Bitcoin solves all three, and there's no other money that
right?
Security, scalability.
The scalability part is tricky. Like, it would have to solve any two of three. We've never solved the bottom two. Anyways,
So you're saying Bitcoin doesn't solve scalability?
well, scalability, it on the base layer of Bitcoin, it doesn't necessarily solve for scalability, but layers can be built on. So it's like the internet, right? Like, you have the internet protocols that the whole world runs on, but not everything is built on.
But you
this,
need
like,
other programs, like actual.
yeah, like
Okay.
email is built on top of,
Right.
right? And I don't even know all the technical language, but like,
But already Bitcoin's doing better than what we have.
yeah.
Better than anything else.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said you wanted to talk about a ledger. What do you?
Well,
do you wanna
the
go
ledger, yeah, maybe not.
Well, I would just like to go into like what actually is a Bitcoin. So like it's digital.
Yeah.
So I'm buying a part of a code. Like, how does that work exactly?
So you're buying, I guess you're getting part of a network,
Right.
right? When you talk about the Bitcoin network, this is a massive network of computers throughout the world. And so these are, we don't have to get into what is every part of that network, but it's Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin nodes.
Okay.
So Brent talked about the ledger. So a ledger is just a way of keeping track of stuff, right?
Yeah, it's just who's got what.
Yeah, who's got what, essentially. So Bitcoin is in one sense, it's just a really big ledger. So this is why it's not like a Bitcoin and it's a coin and it's worth X. It's part of this network. That network is a ledger of transactions.
Yeah. So we should talk about a ledger. So what is a ledger? A ledger is a record of who owns what.
Right.
So essentially that.
I did. Yeah, I just said that. So.
Yeah. So you have this, I have this, right? And then I send some to you. So now the ledger gets updated. Now, if you have a centralized ledger where like one guy, we're going to make him a Roman or something like that. Or
All right.
yeah,
Nice.
Italian. He's updating the ledger, right? So every time there's a transaction, he's like, okay, I record it. And like, we have one ledger and it's the master copy.
And people can look and they can see.
Yeah. And well, so like, let's say somebody's like a merchant's like, oh, by the way, I just want to add a zero here and tweak that. And like,
right.
nobody
because
knows.
everybody trusts that ledger.
Yeah. Everybody in the
That's what that
entire
ledger
world
says
is on
goes.
this ledger. And they're like, okay, this is the money. It's moving here and here and here and here. Well, it's easy to kind of go in and muddle it, right? When there's one copy of the ledger and it's centralized and one
Is that
person,
what we have now with dollars? We have one ledger, or
in a sense, yeah, we don't even know.
Each country does.
It's not,
Okay.
it's almost like they don't even know how much money's out there, and like,
so they don't have a ledger.
well, not a very good way
Not a
of
good
keeping
one.
track of it, right? But what Bitcoin does is, because you asked, what do you actually own when you own a Bitcoin?
Right.
Like, you actually, it basically says you own X amount of this finite amount of Bitcoin in the ledger. So it's basically like you own one, we call it a Bitcoin, but you own this much out of 21 million that there isn't ever going to be in existence, right? And then let's say you give me half of one. So now it says like in the ledger gets updated, and now it says you own half of that and I own half of that,
Okay.
right? So you basically have your spot in the ledger guaranteed, right?
Okay.
And it's a digital ledger. So you can like activate it anywhere in the world and see your balance.
So this just so then this
Does
just
that make
sounds
sense?
kooky to people though. Like I don't know. Like
But
how,
that is what money
Yeah.
is, right? It's just a record of your value and where it was sent.
I guess it's just different because it's fully digital. Like there's nothing, you can't hold anything. It's just, it's
But what Mark
saying-
said off the top of the show is our current system is fully
Right.
digital too.
Okay.
Like you go on your bank account, it's not like you look on your phone and like dollar bills start falling out. It's like, no, it's
wish.
just digital. Yeah.
Well, and that can be changed, right? Sometimes
Right.
the bank makes a mistake,
Yeah.
but if the mistake says you now have $1 million in your bank account, like you could go spend that.
Right.
Eventually, maybe the bank would catch up with you and be like, "Hey, we need that back," and you'd be like, "Sorry, I
Yeah.
bought a Lamborghini."
But I
like,
lost my wallet the other day, and then like some guy spent $100 on my Visa card, right? And I just called them up, and I was like, "Can I get that money back?" And they're like, "Yep." I'm like,
They don't have
so
that
they
money.
they
just
don't have
made-
that money. They just double spent it. Like they went in their ledger and they were like, "Yep, we'll just add another $100 and give it to you," right?
Yeah.
So like they just diluted the money supply by $100 just by like that's what. So with Bitcoin, what Bitcoin does is it decentralizes the ledger, right? So when Mark's talking about nodes and all these things, like a node is basically just a copy of the ledger,
Yeah.
right? So you can start a node. You just buy one of these little things, a little computer, a couple $100. You plug it in, you run the software, and basically you on that node have a copy of the entire global ledger, right? Of Bitcoin.
Okay.
But it's the same ledger that every other node has. So there's like thousands of nodes or hundreds
So
of thousands.
Bitcoin
of
is a software that like runs a ledger basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And in order to update the ledger, right, because that's a very important piece, right? So if you want to update the ledger with a new entry to say, okay, well, Mark sent this money to here, and to like, obviously, when you update the ledger, it has to be right? Like
Yeah.
you can't be lying, right? And so who gets to update the ledger?
Right.
The government, the Chinese or the North Korean government, right?
No, I know that's not right.
Yeah. So in Bitcoin's case,
So you're saying it's decentralized, so nobody
yeah,
updates it?
no.
Or
So
everybody
what I'm
updates it?
saying is the copies of the ledger are decentralized, and who gets to update the ledger? They have to compete to update it. So you have to compete by expending real world energy and mine Bitcoin. So if you hear people talk about mining Bitcoin, they're competing for the opportunity to update the ledger. And the way it's set up is when you update the ledger, you get a reward.
When you update it truthfully, like when you have the right update.
Yeah, like the way that the system proves that you're truthful is by you actually did this math problem. Basically, they say, like, okay, everybody in the world can compete to solve this problem, and the person who solves it, they're the right one,
Okay.
right? So you have to expend like hundreds of thousands or millions or whatever dollars to get this mining rig set up, and then go and compete and try and mine Bitcoin.
Yeah. So
that
when we
make
talk
sense?
about mining, right, essentially there's a preset algorithm to determine, and so I'll just kind of make it simple. Let's say there's 21 million Bitcoin, and to mine a Bitcoin, you have to solve an intense mathematical problem.
Okay.
And when you do that, then you can update the ledger, but also everybody else has to kind of agree with that
Okay.
on the network, right? So that you can't just have like a fake update to
Can't
the
just
network.
update, say I have all the Bitcoins now.
Yeah, because all the other nodes, and so as the network grows, this gets more secure because now there's that many other nodes that have to agree, and if not, then that like it doesn't work. But the way that you do that is by solving this mathematical problem, and so the fellow who came up with Bitcoin made these algorithms, and the algorithms get harder and harder. So it gets harder and harder.
The more people who are trying to
The
do
more
it.
people that are trying to actually mine Bitcoin. So basically, the person who expends, you're all going to expend the right, enough energy, and then at some point you solve that problem.
So you say expending energy, you mean like I have a bunch of computers that are trying
Yes.
to solve this problem, and it's like just running, like all these computers are running at the same time,
Yep.
and I have to spend money to keep these computers running,
Yep.
and then once I solve it, like what's in it for me, I guess. Like
So if
why would I want to update the ledger in the first place?
because you're going to be rewarded with some Bitcoin.
Ooh, okay.
Exactly. So, you can mine by yourself, or what happens is most people mine in pools. because you may
Like-
spend all this energy and you may not actually get that
Wouldn't the
Bitcoin.
computers get wet if they were in the pool?
Some
No, they're special
computers-
waterproof computers.
Yeah. There are some actually cooled by water, right? And they use the heat to generate. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, that's
That would be like a fun place to mine, though, probably. 'Cause,
in a pool.
yeah, I think.
Like, put your
Okay.
swimsuit on. And
So
the
it's a
point
different
is,
kind of pool.
you solve this mathematical problem,
As a
and
group.
then you get as a well. I mean, you could be by yourself, but
Right.
if you have one miner, so one computer mining versus 10,000 of them, like who's going to have
Right.
the best chance to solve that problem? It's going to be you. But when you're in a pool, so let's say all three of us have miners and we go into a pool together,
Mm-hmm.
then we're just going to split that reward among us. So we do get rewarded
So
for the
what's
energy
the
that we've
reward?
expended. Is a Bitcoin. Or it's,
Well-
it may be a certain amount of Bitcoin.
So this is, I guess maybe some people have heard of the halving, but basically, Satoshi Nakamoto, the fellow who started it, he made it so that every 4 years, the reward for solving this problem is a certain amount of Bitcoin, and every 4 years it gets cut in half. And it's going to do that every year or every 4 years until like the year 2140.
Okay, so let me just see if I understand this. So, like a few years ago, there's less people trying to solve this problem. So
Yeah.
it's an easier problem. Like
Yep.
there's only just say like there's 100 people in the whole world trying to solve this problem, but they would have gotten more Bitcoin. So like it's
Yeah, which
You're
is what
competing-
happened when it first started. People were
Okay.
mining hundreds of Bitcoin.
right. Yeah, because I've heard also like a guy bought a pizza and he spent like 10,000 Bitcoin or something.
Yeah.
On it. Like that was the first transaction.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Okay.
right now, today, the block subsidy or the block reward, like that people get for mining one block every 10 minutes, is 3.125 Bitcoins.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay, so that kind of gets
300
into like a blockchain sort of thing.
Yeah. So
that
so
what it-
one of those problems that we solve happens every 10 minutes, and that once that problem is solved, that creates a block in this blockchain. So I don't know if we have time to get into like blockchain.
But we'll just
technology.
say like the ledger is made out of blocks.
blocks. Yeah.
Is
So
it like
every-
Lego?
I don't know. I'm asking you the questions.
Yeah, I mean that's just. I don't think we need to get into it, but that's the structure of the ledger. Is
But
these
like people are
individual
trying
blocks.
to solve this problem. They solve
you,
it,
like, add
and
the
that
block to
creates
the
a
ledger.
block
Plunk.
on the ledger.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just like another entry in the ledger.
Okay.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And then that has to be validated by other. All the nodes have to agree that like
So
yes,
the
this is a
problems
valid.
are difficult to solve, but they're easy to prove, right? So as soon
Yeah.
as someone solves it, then everyone can confirm, like, okay, that's the
Yeah.
right answer.
So, I mean, this is one thing people are like, well, I'll just start my own Bitcoin. Or what's to stop me from taking over most of the computing power of the Bitcoin network, which you could do, right? It would cost you probably billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't make sense. But you could take it over and then make your own, say, like, no, I got my own questions or I'm going to solve my own problems. And this is what Bitcoin is now. So, and it's been tried.
Right.
Right, where people have said, "Now we want a different kind of Bitcoin," right? And so that's where you get what's called a fork. We don't need to go into this too
Yeah.
much, but people just say like, "Oh, what about security? If someone's got a quantum computer and they solve this, well, all the other computers on the network have to agree that this is a valid transaction, the one that you did." So where you change the network and you say like, "Oh yeah, half of all the Bitcoin is now
Right.
mine. I'm going to change the ledger." So that's like, you got that ledger back in Venice or whatever, where the guy's like, this guy just gave me 8 gold coins. And so I'm going to note that on the ledger. And then, I'm just going to, like, my buddy should get one and nobody else can really see. So I'm just going to change this to say, no, he only gave me 7 gold coins. And he gave 1 to this guy, right? Which is what happened. People would make sneaky changes to the ledger.
Right.
There's no sneaky changes. It's out there for everyone to see. This is the beauty of having a decentralized network. And so all the people that have nodes and all the people that are mining have to agree that this is so there's a certain protocol. In order to change that protocol, everyone has to agree. So somebody could take over the network. It's very, very unlikely. But even if they did, it would be stupid
Be a waste of
because
time.
nobody else would agree.
Right.
Why would I agree to have my Bitcoin devalued
Right.
or like half of it gone to you? I wouldn't. I'd just be like, fine, you do your own thing. And that's why you have like Bitcoin Cash and these other Bitcoin
So yeah,
variants.
let's get into that sort of. So I've heard of like Ethereum too, and other cryptocurrencies.
Oh, you just know the trigger words, don't you?
So what's to stop someone from just going and starting a new Bitcoin, like starting an Ethereum or
Nothing.
Nothing.
so why what?
So
What's the likelihood of them succeeding?
yeah, so one.
So it's just like Bitcoin was started before them, so that they're further up along.
I mean, essentially, that is one of the arguments, right? If you look at the Bitcoin network, so you have this whole infrastructure now of all these miners and all these nodes that comprise the Bitcoin network that make it super resilient, right? So you would have to destroy every single node in
so what's
order.
a node? So a miner is like confirming that they got
Miners
the right
doing
answer.
the hard work.
Yeah, what's
right?
a node
And
doing?
it gets really hot because it's working hard, uses a lot of energy. A node just verifies transactions on the network. So it has, you can get a node and it's not really going to benefit you financially, right? You'll have a node, and lots of people have nodes, and it's just a little computer.
But it's
nothing
adding
crazy.
to the security.
Yeah, it's just verifying transactions. And then it also makes the network like faster and more, the more nodes there are, the quicker that things can get sent around and the more secure it is as well.
Okay.
So just additional layers. And so you need nodes to run Bitcoin.
Okay.
And then as people add technologies, then there will be different things you can do with nodes as well,
Okay.
and different.
All right, but I cut you off
networks you
about
can run.
about other cryptocurrencies. So
So
I'd like to get
so
you all
Bitcoin
fired
is
up.
not a cryptocurrency. I'll just say that, right? Bitcoin is Bitcoin. Everything else is like a pretender. So
Okay.
in my that's the simple version, right? There's nothing else like Bitcoin. And so the biggest, Ethereum is probably the biggest competitor, quote unquote, that we hear about. So I guess we have to talk about proof of work versus proof of stake.
Oh boy.
So the reason that Bitcoin works in, like everything we've talked about, is proof of work, right? Everybody has to
someone
agree
did-
that
someone
you
did the work.
did the work,
And
you
then everyone
solved
said,
that
"Yep."
problem.
Okay.
So Gideon, Gideon, you say like, hey, I solved this problem, guys. Like, and then everybody else has to verify like, yep, he did solve it. Yep, it's good. And that takes a ton of energy for all these computers to actually do the work and then agree on it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what's called proof of work. It's like, show your work, right? When you're doing a math quiz, right? They want to know how, number one, did you get the right answer?
Yeah.
Yes. But then how did you get that answer? Right? I always hated that in school because I'm like, I'll give you the answer. I don't want to show you the work, right?
Yeah.
But no, prove your work. So that's one. And this is where people are like, oh, Bitcoin uses so much energy because it's proof of work. We're going to have something more environmentally friendly, which is every cryptocurrency out there, Ethereum, Solana, all the, XRP, whatever, it's all proof of stake.
Dogecoin.
So that means if you solve a problem or if you do, if you're creating more on the network, you have to show that you already have a bunch of Ethereum. So essentially, if you have the most Ethereum, you could say like, yes, these transactions are valid because I have like 100,000 ETH, right? So it's not decentralized essentially. We
don't need to
do
get
a whole
right into
episode
it.
on
I'm
that.
just like, so it is different.
It's
Bitcoin
it's centralized,
much
right?
different.
Somebody creates these crypto. So, okay, a little bit of pop culture. I don't know if you know the Haktua girl. She did a kind of a crude video, and she became famous. Haley Welch.
I will never confirm nor deny if I know.
Okay, good. Anyway, she became famous for a bit of a crude video, a bit of a folk hero, whatever. And she capitalized on
I just
that.
saw
Had
it.
a
She made a
podcast.
cryptocurrency. Yeah.
Yeah, so she made her own coin, cryptocurrency, right? And she did what's called a rug pull,
Right.
which is where you pull the rug out from under people. So anyway, she launched the coin, and then it went up in value, and then it boom dropped, right? And that boom drop was the rug pull, where, and I can't prove that it was hers specifically, but more than likely. So I'm gonna start a good stewards coin. Right.
Okay.
And I'm going to convince everybody this thing's really great. And most people only buy these things because they think the value is going to go up and they can make a quick buck.
Yeah.
So you get this like FOMO and people are like, yeah, I got to buy it. So anyways, that's what happened. Right. So I would issue the good stewards coins. So I'm the one, I've created these coins. I have the proof of stake because like I have them all.
Right.
And I'm going to sell them to you guys. right? So I'm going to sell 1 million of these coins, and initially they're worth nothing because, like, who am I? But if I convince enough people this is a really cool, good thing, maybe they'll be worth $10 each. That's $10 million. So I'm going to sell them all, and then I'm just going to sell them all immediately. So typically in the stock market, when everybody sells a stock at the same time, it drops, right? And then it becomes worth, because there's some reason they're selling it.
Yeah.
But this is where the holder, the original creator, sells it all. And so now I got $10 million because you've exchanged your US dollars for one of these good stewards coins. And then you have a good stewards coin. But now it's
what is that
nothing because nobody wants it. And that's pretty common with a lot of cryptocurrencies where they do these rug pulls, and you get these massive swings, right?
But Bitcoin's not like that, you're saying, because
You
it's
can't do that.
decentralized, right? You can't
do
not
that.
one person can just sell all
I
the
can't
Bitcoin.
issue 21 million. Number one,
Okay.
I don't have them. The network has them, and you have to solve these predetermined problems in order to get them.
In order
But that
to solve
takes
the
way more
problems, you
computing.
have to get all the energy.
Yeah, that takes computing power as opposed to just like, let's do a quick thing.
And the way money works, like when Mark keeps saying a network, like there's a network effect too. Like you think about Facebook, right? Like Facebook is just a networking tool, right? Like if I want to connect with people in the world, where am I going to go? Like Facebook has probably the most interconnected network. So it's actually a really valuable network to be on, right? Because if I'm on there, then I can connect with, like, that's why Facebook Marketplace, for example, works so well, because like everybody has it and everybody uses it, right? If you start your own, you're free to do so. Like
But
you
no
can
one's
start
on it, so that's not useful.
So you go start your own Facebook 2.0 marketplace and try and sell something on there, right? Nobody's on there. Nobody, like, you basically, what you did, you kind of did the same thing with these cryptocurrencies are doing, is like you fork Bitcoin or you make a new one and you're the owner of that one. And, but like you just do not have an audience. And
so people would be, they'd be like, why would I buy that one when I can buy Bitcoin? Similar to Facebook Marketplace. It's like, it's just similar. I could go and buy your cryptocurrency, but why would I do that?
I mean, that's not the only reason, but that's just like one layer to this, right?
Okay.
It's an interesting article for people who actually want to read more about this. Like Robert Breedlove has a book, I think it's called The Number Zero in Bitcoin. And he talks about how, in a sense, he says, many believe that Bitcoin is just one of thousands of crypto assets. This is true in the same way that the number zero is just one of an infinite series of numbers. In reality, Bitcoin is special and so is zero. Each is an invention which led to a discovery that fundamentally reshaped its overarching system. For Bitcoin, that system is money, and for zero, it is mathematics. Since money and math are mankind's two universal languages, both Bitcoin and zero are critical constructs for civilization. So he's arguing that before zero, like the invention of the number zero, they just had the numbers, like the mathematics that you can actually do without zero and without negative numbers. Like they didn't even know about these things, right? So imagine trying to do some of the modern math calculations that allow us to run our entire world, right? Like
Split the atom.
Yeah, like do all of these crazy physics things, go to the moon or whatever it is, right?
If we went there.
Skeptics, without actually having the number zero. So
how many times did we go to the moon?
But how many? but how many times? So his argument too is like, how many times can you discover the number zero? Right? Like once it's discovered, right? It's almost like the number zero. God created it; it was always there.
Yeah.
But mankind had no idea, and mankind is going about its thing, and I was like, the number zero. Oh man, like I didn't. Right? Mm-hmm. And maybe man just like, oh, I'm gonna self-glorify.
But once it's out, people are gonna try to make crypto zeros, but they're not gonna.
Yeah, like they're kind of like you can't rediscover that, right? It's just there. So Bitcoin, I would argue, is similar in the sense that like it is the same discovery for money. It's discovery of absolute scarcity. It's a way that human beings have actually created a way through technology to make something that is absolutely, like there is a limit to this. Like there's no other thing in the entire world.
Since it's not a physical thing, we could have, like we can actually create.
Because so physical things, we don't know. Like there could be more in the earth. There could be more created. Like but digital things, like we know it's a mathematical calculation. Like this, there will always be this many of them. Okay. So long as everybody agrees on the network, which is right. So like, and you can't rediscover that. So the cryptocurrencies are like, oh, it's just one of many, or we're going to make a new one. Like you can't rediscover that, right?
Yeah, and I mean with crypto as well, like Ethereum, they can add, right? Whoever holds the most Ethereum can add more Ethereum. They can always add, and they have, right? And whether any other coin as well, right? Okay. They talk about, well, it solves the scalability problem, right? They can always add more to the network. Yeah, that's
what the government says too. I don't.
Well, it's interesting. Any digital like CBDC, so central bank digital currency, none of them are based on Bitcoin,
right?
Because they can't control it, right? They're all, any of the trials that they've done, most of them have been based on Ethereum, for example, right? Some are looking at XRP and the Solana, some of these other ones, but that's because it's something that they can control. So it's like what's the point in moving to a full CBDC for us? Like for the government, I see the point. They can just print more. Right, they have a platform, and they would make their own. They can
print more on their own.
They would make their own offshoot of Ethereum or whatever it is. But the whole point is that scalability, right? That's what they always trumpet. Like Bitcoin's not scalable, and so my argument is that it has solved part of the scalability problem, and more layers will come on to solve that. But just that, I mean, as a skeptic, I would say, governments, like what do governments like and what do governments hate? I'm going to pick the one they hate, which is Bitcoin, right? It has faced so much opposition, notwithstanding Trump's comments about having a strategic Bitcoin reserve now. Like,
what did Putin say? Like, they can't ban Bitcoin?
Who can control Bitcoin? Nobody.
Yeah, even Putin. Unless he's lying, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's what makes me like, oh man.
But it's humbling, right? Like if you think as a government leader of a big country like that with all these resources, like you can't control this algorithm. That's humbling. It's like, oh, okay, this is a force that no human being can mess with because it's just greater than them. It's outside of that. Like it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's humbling to people. You think you can change Bitcoin? There's all these memes, right? Like you think you can change Bitcoin and go in like, oh, I'm going to fix it. And like, no, Bitcoin just changes you. It's like this. It's like this thing that like, oh, I can't do anything about this, which is what we like, right? Like, so when we're looking for money and a store of value, like we want something that you cannot change. Like this is going to be here, right? Yeah.
So what are you buying it for? Like you gonna just keep it forever and ever, or?
Well, so that's
it goes to $1 billion, and then you're gonna sell it and be rich?
That's the thing, right? We talk about, so people hodl Bitcoin. So it's just a misspelling of the word hold. Some guy was, I think, drunk late at night and said, I'm going to hodl my Bitcoin forever. And then it just like took off and everybody adopted that. That's the simple, silly story about hodling.
Yeah. It's not like hold on for dear life.
Yeah. No, people say it. It's just, that's the origin story. But so people saying in a hodl, and that just evokes terms of like, you have this thing that's valuable, you're never going to get rid of it.
Right.
Like, I don't buy that because eventually you're going to use it. Like, what is the point of storing your value if you can't use it at some point?
Yeah. People have asked me that, like Bitcoin hit this, are you going to sell it? Like this is the highest it's ever been.
But okay, think about that when you sell it. So Bitcoin hit this, I'm going to sell it. So what are you saying is I own sound money that cannot be manipulated. I can send it anywhere in the world for a relatively low transaction cost and no one can stop me. And I don't have to trust a third party. And it continues to go up in value every 4-year increment. And I'm going to sell it for what? Government controlled dollars that they can print out of thin air that are immediately starting to devalue.
But more of them than when I bought it.
Yeah, but more of them when you bought it, right? So like, but as soon as you get those dollars, what are you going to be thinking? Right. Man, I wish I had an asset to protect the value of these, right? So like,
that's the only good reason to sell it.
Yeah. So what we do with money is, as human beings, we store the value of our time and labor. We defer consumption, right? So you go and you work, you make all this money, or you expend your labor and time, and the value of that is stored in money. And you store it in money so that in the future you can consume with it, right?
So that's the thing, yeah. You store it for future consumption, but at some point there's going to be consumption. Like you're going to need to.
At some point, you can't just
put all your money in Bitcoin and then just never spend any of it. Like you gotta.
No, you have to live, right?
I would say Bitcoin is more of like a savings technology, right? It's not Like you don't just buy all, like they don't take
Right.
all your money, put it in Bitcoin, and then like go and try and live your life.
Well,
right
some
now,
people
right?
do that, right?
Yeah.
So like I'll go back to bull Bitcoin, for example, right? Some people will just take their paycheck, put it into Bitcoin, and then use something like bull Bitcoin to pay their bills online, right? So they have this bills, I think it's BYLLS
Yeah.
service, where you can just like sign up and get like your hydro bill, and like they're kind of the bridge between the fiat and the Bitcoin world. So you could just put everything into Bitcoin and then spend it that way. You know, and the advantage there is that it's not going to deflate like the Canadian dollar.
Right.
Right. So even on a small real-time basis. Now, I would say Bitcoin's very volatile. So that's, you got to have a lot of faith in it to do that. You know, like I don't
Yeah,
do that.
if you need the money right away, right?
Well, yeah, and it's because it may drop in value, like day to day,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It may also go up, and hey, great, but it may also drop. So, so I guess there's two things, right? One is future consumption. Eventually, you're going to use it to buy stuff or whatever. But also, we've talked about the network, right? Most of this, like, there's not tools right now for lending. Like, there's some, they're coming out, but eventually, this will be. Depends what you think, right? What's going to happen? Is our fiat system going to crash, and then eventually everybody just adopts Bitcoin as the model? If that's the case, then you own a part of the monetary network that underpins all of world finance. And then at that point, you won't have to sell your Bitcoin. You'll just be able to lend it, because that's going to be how people interact, right? And it will be a different lending than we're looking at now. It has to, right now, when a bank lends money, they're just creating money. Right? You want to get a mortgage? They're like, okay, here's 500 grand. And we're just adding that to the ledger, but it doesn't come from anywhere. We're just adding it. Right? And that's why we talk about the money supply inflating. You just added 500 grand to the ledger.
Yeah, that's why we like real estate investing. You get to access that money first.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting a new mortgage.
So with Bitcoin lending, that's different. Now it's just Gideon has a Bitcoin, he's going to lend it to Brent, and then get some interest off of that or whatever. But that's okay, because Brent's doing something useful with that, and he's creating more value. He's going to have money so he can afford to pay it back, but it's not being created out of nowhere.
You think it creates the kind of economy and world you want to live in, right? Where Gideon, let's say, has 10 Bitcoins, and now they're worth $100 million.
Sweet.
Well, he knows that if I give it to a worthwhile cause, right, that will make the world a better place. But if I lend it to this, program that is clearly a debacle, I'm not going to do that. So what are you doing in the marketplace? You're putting, you're putting these people out of business. People who do like all the consequences. So like, think about education, right? Education industry. People who research things that aren't real or promote false ideologies, right? Like
Nobody does that.
yeah,
Oh, man.
right? Or
So
like
why would I
people
get
who-
rid of my sound money for something that's not even
Like if
valuable?
you
Like,
have
they're
money
not-
that is
we
going to
can't-
be worth more tomorrow, man, you better make a good product or service
Mark's
for
gonna
me.
make a dad joke. I can see it.
No,
in
it's
his
not a
eyes.
dad joke. I'm just like, we can't do a paper on like gender diversity and the effect of sea brine,
Oh, it's a
You
rant.
just-
like seahorses.
Yeah, you just might not get.
And this was a paper that somebody put out, and they had a ceremonial wedding with the.
So those are the
with the
sorts of
sea
things that
monkeys.
happen in a world where
Like,
there's
just
unsound money.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter. We can just make more
Yeah.
to support these. Like, who in their right mind would fund that study?
Yeah.
So what needs
Who
to
actually
happen
creates
in order
value?
for us to stop doing that and to everyone just
my rant.
transact in Bitcoin?
So the way I see it
How would that happen?
is money goes through this life cycle of adoption, right? So you have money. Historically, you look at all the monies, they go from a collectible to like, oh, this is kind of interesting, to a store of value, right? To a medium of exchange that we actually use it to, buy things with, and then a unit of account where like you're actually pricing things in Bitcoin, and everyone thinks in Bitcoin and whatever, right? So right now we're going into the store of value stage where people are starting to buy it and hold on to it for like 5-10, like I'm not reselling, like that kind of attitude, right? The hodl thing. So you buy it, you hold on to it, and it for you, like for me, if I buy Bitcoin, I'm not intending to use it as a medium. I'm not going to buy anything with it. I'm buying it as a store of value.
Right.
So the problem is, since it's so young, such a small asset, like it's, what is it, 1 something trillion market
$2 trillion.
cap, 2 trillion market cap.
Yeah.
So of
Gold
all
is
the
about 10 trillion.
yeah, so of all the global wealth, it's only 2 trillion of like hundreds of trillions of dollars. So it's this young, volatile, new monetary instrument that's being created. Wealth is being dumped into it, and everyone's cash balances are increasing, right? So like if you buy Bitcoin every week for $100 or $50 or whatever, right? And then everybody does that, you know, you could think in 20 years from now, there will be a like Bitcoin will go from 2 trillion to like 20 trillion, 100 trillion, 200 trillion, right? We don't know. But as more and more people hold more and more of it, it becomes more ubiquitous. And now it's all of a sudden, okay, well, if I did a service for Mark, why doesn't he pay me in Bitcoin? Like he has Bitcoin, I have Bitcoin, I could spend it over here, you have it, right? Then it slowly merges into a medium of exchange. So right now we're kind of in this stage where like, yeah, it's not useful. Of course it's not useful. It's brand new. Like,
But if all our listeners get it, that would be like half of Canada. So then, boom, right there. That's
Done.
easy. Okay.
but yeah, and then people get excited about the price because they look at like, well, okay, if this much of the world's wealth went into it, let's say 1%, right? If 1% of all the companies and governments, whatever, went into this, like what would the price be, right? And you get excited because you know that if you, let's say you own 1 Bitcoin. Now you know you own 1/21 millionth of the entire global monetary supply of Bitcoin. And you know that China and the US and Russia and MicroStrategies and all these companies and countries want to buy it. And you
So
own
governments
120
and businesses have started to buy Bitcoin.
yeah, and you will never
Interesting.
yeah, and you will never be selling yours, so you own a fraction that like countries are competing to get your fraction. There's never going to be more of it. They can't make more of it. So that's why the price goes up, right?
Well, yeah, and can you say that you own 1/21 millionth of
anything?
the wealth in the world right now? I don't know what that number is, but it's like that's a big number,
I cannot.
right? So like total global wealth is what, like 1,000 trillion, I think, roughly.
Yeah.
And so to own 1/21 millionth of that is, I don't know, it's still a lot.
Yeah.
Like a huge number. So if you think, could you own, you know, even half, right? People are saying like if you have 0.1 of a Bitcoin, that will put you in the top, you know, 1% of wealthiest people eventually. So, but I think part of it is yeah, you're going to hold it, and maybe it's not going to be, maybe in my lifetime, it will not widely be used as the unit of account. Maybe it will, but you know, I know for my kids, I'm creating long-term wealth, right? And like the Bible says that, right? The wise man creates wealth not just for himself, but for his children and his grandchildren, right? Create a legacy. But people also do use it. I mean, you can sell it right now. It's
Yeah, and as
there's enough
if you think
buyers.
about it, as the price goes up, your incentive to sell it grows too, right? Like if the price went to 100 million right now,
Yeah, I
and
feel
you
that
had
a
a
lot. Like
Bitcoin-
I'm in the middle of renovating. Like my wife and I just bought a house, and I need like cash, but I have a bit of Bitcoin, and I'm seeing it go up, and I'm like, should I just sell it and I'll have some money for renovations? But I know in the back of my head, I'm like, I kind of want to just keep this. I'd rather just borrow money from someone and.
yeah, but I mean, so we're seeing interesting applications of.
Yeah.
We just heard about some real estate developers who would, you know, they'll get a loan from the bank to do this real estate development,
And they'll put it in Bitcoin.
and they will put part of it in Bitcoin.
Okay.
So now, you know, so this only works over a longer, you know, if you think of Bitcoin having like a 4-year kind of cycle, right? We've seen the big ups and downs, but over 4 years, it's got the best compound annual growth rate of any,
25%.
blows everything else away, right? So, you know, if you hold it for 4 years, you're going to do, and again, not investment advice, but history just has shown if you held it from the beginning,
But if you hold it for 8
crazy
years,
returns, even better.
Yeah, 12 years.
Well, but what I'm saying is for, you know, if you're going to buy some now and you need to spend it next year, that may not be the wisest move because it
Don't
could go up a
invest
lot.
in
It could go,
Bitcoin. Okay.
But some people are using it for investments, right? So they'll take some of the money they got for that development and they put it in Bitcoin because they know it's going to be a 5-year life cycle for this development. And then, so now instead of having a 5% return on that whole real estate investment over 5 years, now that Bitcoin has increased in value,
Yeah.
maybe now they have a 10% return or a 7% return, even though that Bitcoin's only a fraction of the, and I mean, so there's people applying this all
That's
over.
pretty risky, but
To,
No, it's
No.
actually unrisky.
no, you're diversifying, and yeah, people have been doing this. Like I've seen churches doing it, just have a small amount in Bitcoin,
Nonprofit.
pensions, nonprofits, like all over the place. People are figuring out these strategies because short-term volatile, long-term, it has,
Yeah. So the worst. So if you pick any 4 years in Bitcoin's history and you pick the worst performing 4 years, so you bought it at the peak and you sold it at the worst time in 4 years later, the worst one is about 25% compound annual growth rate.
that's awful.
So the worst somebody has done if they held it for 4 years is 25% compounded for 4 years.
and so if you're managing investments for people, like this is what you're looking at, right? You're looking at future growth of a company, but you're also looking at past performance is not an indicator of future growth, but like that's what you have to look at the data that you have, historical data. So now Bitcoin has enough historical data for people to make an informed decision, I think, to say that like, here's what it has performed. And this is, my prediction of how it should perform over the next X amount of years. So all that to say is that there is a real world use case scenario now for shorter term, 4 or 5 years, investments and uses of Bitcoin, right? Because if you can scrimp and save and sacrifice your whole life, but why not, if you have a family, why not get a nice house for your family to grow up in? You can't really put a price on that, right? So if you have the availability, do that. And that pays dividends in terms of having a family.
Did we answer all of ChatGPT's questions yet? Or?
I haven't even got to them. I just been coming up.
Okay.
So what would you guys recommend? You would recommend everyone who's listening at least look into getting some Bitcoin? Or
Ape in, sell everything, and buy Bitcoin.
Right on.
What would I recommend? I would probably recommend educate yourself on it, because I think.
Would you recommend buying $10 worth before you do that?
So one way to educate yourself is to actually buy some, because you're going to learn. It's like doing things, right? Like you're going to learn more by doing it.
Doing things.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like anything you want to
do.
do.
Can we put that on a shirt? It's like doing things.
Bitcoin is like doing.
It's like Nike, just do it, and Two Stewards show. It's like
just doing things.
You learn better by doing it.
Jump in the deep end.
And if you put $100 in
Jump in the shallow.
Dip your toes in.
And for you, $100 is, is worth looking at. You're probably going to read about it in the evening when you come home from work, and you're like, wait a minute, I have $100 in this. And
right. So if you tell someone, hey, you should look into it, they're not going to. But if you say you have $100,000 in, you're going to look at it. You're going to figure out what this thing is.
You're going to be keeping an eye on it and checking it out.
And if you want to get $20 of it for free, you can go to our link.
No, but it's true, right? Like real estate, you can research, and some people do this, right? They will research real estate for years and years, but never actually do it.
Yeah.
Right? Even though they have the means and the availability to do it, they'll just never get into it, and they miss out, right? You have to at some point.
I have learned more in the past few months of actually owning a house and trying to renovate it than I have all the research that I did. And you just jump in, and now I'm I got to figure this out, because otherwise
I got it now. So we're not, and so you could do that, and you could totally flounder, and be like, well, I've ripped everything out. That was the easy part.
Oh, I did
so
that.
easy. Yeah, but then you could be like, I have no idea what to do, and I got to sell.
I did that too, yeah.
And but you're not gonna, right?
No.
We'll never let you do that. But there's a chance that you could just be like, I can't deal with this. I got to sell it, and I'm out, and kind of ruin your life. So I mean, there's that, which is why I'm saying don't go all in immediately, right? Get in, get familiar with it, understand it, and be able to sleep at night.
Get off of zero is what you guys
say. The only wrong number is zero.
Right. Okay.
When it comes to Bitcoin. But I mean, it's like anything else. You have to educate yourself, right?
Yeah, and the reason you need to educate yourself is to get conviction. Yeah, you need to believe that why you're actually doing this, and that's kind of why we started the podcast too, is to help people build conviction around things based on our research and experience.
Not
right?
to
Like,
get convictions, but to build conviction.
convicted?
We don't want people to get convicted.
Well, I mean, so people will give me the argument like it's too speculative, and as a
Pyramid
Christian,
scheme.
you
Too
can't.
volatile. And
Yeah, like you can't do that, right? I've heard people argue from a Christian standpoint, like you shouldn't invest in the stock market because it's risky,
yeah.
and and also like what are the gains that you make? Are they actually real? Are they reflective of something? So you can make that argument, but like you have to be convicted in your heart, right? Whatever you do on this earth, you should be convicted that it's the right thing to do, because you can do the right thing for the wrong reasons. And in God's eyes, that's still wrong. So if you're stewarding your money truly, right? Like some people will just get into Bitcoin because like, it's going up. I'm going to get rich.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's the wrong reason. You need to understand what it is, how it works, and I think buy it for the right reason.
Yeah, and like we say pursue truth, and we talk about that in the context of culture and ideologies and stuff. But in the case of money, like, actually pursue the truth in money. Like what
You can.
read the books and like study. Is it sound? And if not, like what's happening? Well, is theft God pleasing? No. Well, we live in a world that bases their entire monetary system on organized theft. Okay, well, do I want to participate in that? Like how do I feel about that? Right? Those are hard questions. Like when I get a loan, I'm stealing from everybody, essentially. Right? Like,
Really? How do you do that if you're alone?
Yeah.
That's his anger. This is the best book that we have read on this, I would say, the Bitcoin Standard. People want to grab that.
Yeah,
That's,
Seyfedin Ammous.
It goes through the history of money and like breaks down better than we could do why Bitcoin is a good solution.
Yeah,
We'll get him on the show probably. I don't know.
Well, we've also got we've had Vijay Boyapati
Yeah.
on the show, right? The bullish case for Bitcoin.
Yeah, there's lots of books out there.
Yeah, and so there's no shortage of resources to do that research that we're talking about, right? Like this is maybe a good starting point, but this is really basic.
Yeah.
And
if you guys have any other questions, feel free to send them in. We'll do another episode like this.
And if you buy it today and then you message us in a year from now and it's lower than you bought it, I don't want to read those messages. We're going to read it live on the air.
yeah, that's right.
Don't sell it.
Yeah, I mean the only people I know who regret stuff in Bitcoin is
Yourself?
myself. People who sold it,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
not really people who bought it. I don't
Or
think.
people who leveraged to buy it
Yeah,
and then had to sell it
yeah,
at a bad time. Yeah.
yeah.
So I made that mistake too.
Yeah, I think we all have. Maybe not all in the world, but in this room. Okay, any other questions about Bitcoin? ChatGPT?
Where should
Stand
people
in?
go to buy Bitcoin? Was one of the questions on here. They should go to mission.bullbitcoin.com
Well-
/2stewards. Or
Yes.
click the link below.
No, okay. That's actually something we should talk about.
What's so good
Briefly.
about Bull Bitcoin? I would
Briefly. Yeah.
So there's a saying in Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coins.
guess. Okay.
So the way that Bitcoin is secured when you buy it is with what we call keys.
Yeah,
and that can be a seed phrase of 12 or 24 words. And that is like your proof that you own that part of the network or that part of the ledger, or that you have access to that Bitcoin, right? So people have lost Bitcoin by simply storing their Bitcoin on an exchange. So you can go to, like, there's lots of Bitcoin
Or like
exchanges.
losing their keys.
Or losing, yeah, well, I mean.
You guys lost me. I don't know.
Okay, so there's two ways you can hold Bitcoin.
Okay.
Right? You can buy it from me. Let's say I'm an exchange, and you're
Hello,
going to give me $1,000, and then I'll be like, okay, I got your Bitcoin right here, Gideon. Whenever you want it, you let me know. Right? You don't actually.
That's how I hold my Bitcoin. It's not good.
I hold the keys.
Right.
The exchange. You don't hold the keys. I hold them. But it's fine because I'll give it to you whenever
he
you
holds
want.
the faith that you're going to give him the Bitcoin.
Exactly. So what has happened, like Mt. Gox was a good example. This is early on in Bitcoin, part of the Bitcoin learning curve, I suppose. But they were doing some shady things. The exchange collapsed. Lots of people lost their Bitcoin. So how do you get around that? Well, you hold your own keys. So you get a hardware wallet. There's a little device not connected to the internet. And you'll connect it to your computer to send the information
Like
over
a
to it.
USB stick?
Yeah, like or a USB stick, whatever.
Okay.
And you generate a seed phrase. So you generate your keys. And then you've taken that off of, nobody else holds those keys, only you. And that is your proof to access the ledger. So, I mean, we can get really complicated, but the point
like
is...
basically on the ledger, it would say like, okay, Mark owns this. But you've just taken it off. Like, you're not going to give it to anyone.
Yeah, it goes to this address. And then in order to send it back out into the world, I need to produce those keys to say, like, yes, you are actually the rightful owner of this on the ledger. So basically, I
kind of get that, but it's a bit complicated.
I mean, it's simplifying it, but you say you take your Bitcoins yourself and you hold them. And you're holding them on this.
Use a story, Mark, like gold. It's like having the gold under your mattress, right? And having gold under your mattress means you own your money. It also means that you are responsible. So somebody's going to come in your house and take the gold. Well, you can't go to the bank and say, hey, the guy took my gold. It's like, no, you're responsible. It's under your mattress. But if you take your gold and you go to the bank and you say, here, can you hold this for me? And then the bank gets robbed. Well, then the bank's like...
It's their fault.
It's their fault, right? Responsible. So with Bitcoin, it's kind of similar. Like if you put it on an exchange, which is like a digital bank, basically, and they hold it for you, they can get hacked and then you're at a loss, right? But if you hold it yourself, you can protect it, but you're also responsible for it, right? So if you have like $350,000, right? And you buy Bitcoin with it and it goes up to $1 million. And now you have this little USB stick with your keys on it and you lose that, right? Like you can't go to anybody. So it's incentivizing personal responsibility. And there are ways, like once you get in it, to kind of make added layers of security so that people find your keys, they can't steal. Like,
so people got to kind of look into that.
Yeah, look into that. But what I think what Mark's point about like where to buy it, I think you want to try to find an exchange that promotes self-custody, right? Where people hold it themselves, because
this is what Bull Bitcoin does.
That's why we like these guys.
That's why we like these guys. So like they basically
you guys aren't
say,
just trying to get rich.
If you want to buy Bitcoin, if you want to buy Bitcoin, you can't buy it on Bull Bitcoin unless you have a wallet yourself that they will send it to. So they won't ever hold your Bitcoin for you.
Interesting.
Right. And that's something that we look for because it kind of shows an added layer of like I would trust them more if they never held my money. They just sent it directly to me.
So Bull Bitcoin will help you, like you say, hey, I got a wallet, and they'll like put Bitcoin on your wallet.
They'll even like walk you through at a certain level. They'll walk you through setting up a wallet.
Oh, okay.
Right. You can purchase like tutorials, but I mean, they're pretty good. You know what I mean? If it's your first time and you're like, hey, I got this thing, but I'm not really sure, chances are somebody's going to walk you through setting it up. Honestly, it takes a couple
transactions. You send a few dollars around, and then you got the hang of it. It's not... It takes a bit to figure out. Once you figure it out, it's like, oh, okay, right?
Yeah, because it can be nerve-wracking. Like, I'm going to send my Bitcoin to this address, and then it might take a little while, and like... There's no verification. Like, where did it go? You don't want to do that with $1 million. Do it with $10.
Yeah.
To make sure you did everything right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But
what happens if you do lose like your keys?
It's gone.
So your keys is the most important thing. You can lose the hardware.
Yeah.
Actually, you could lose your hardware wallet, but depending on how you have it configured, you can still restore it using those keys. And once you use those keys, it says, okay, it's moving from this address to a new hardware, like an address from this wallet to that wallet, so that if somebody finds that wallet, well, they can't get the Bitcoin off it because it's moved on the ledger, right? That's the beauty of the ledger. But yeah, if you lose the keys, like it's gone.
Yeah, which I find super interesting. Michael Saylor, I'm just assuming people know who he is because he owns
Nobody knows who that is.
So he owns MicroStrategies. It's probably one of the biggest holders, the biggest holder of Bitcoin in the world.
I think so.
So it's a company that has bought Bitcoin with their cash reserves. Anyway, so he kind of made a comment too, like if you die and you just destroy your keys, let's say you own 100 Bitcoins and you die in 50 years and you destroy your keys, nobody will ever get access to that, right? So essentially what you're doing, if you were to die and not give the keys to your kids or someone else, you're giving everybody else who owns Bitcoin your money, like the value of your money, right? Because now it's even more scarce. You just destroyed
inflation.
Yeah, you just destroyed money. So now if you own Bitcoin and somebody dies and forgets to give their keys to someone,
So how many people have done that?
Lots.
Well, there's at least 3 million Bitcoin that are lost
Forever.
probably
Didn't
forever.
VJ have a story about that? He
Yeah.
had a laptop and
That's right.
lost it or something.
Yeah. And he
lost his
doesn't have a
Bitcoins?
way to get, Well, he didn't have his keys. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it was all tied
and
to
I think
his
that'll be
laptop.
more and more common, right? As people put money in and then they don't really protect it themselves. And then, I lost it. Okay, well, that just means the remaining amount that is there will be more and more valuable, right?
Yeah.
So bull Bitcoin and some people like this type of storage is a good idea to look into.
Yeah, I have some Bitcoin like on a wallet on my phone.
Yeah.
Right. And so I could just use that. There may be some transactions I can do online or whatever with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And, so you might have a couple $100. That's fine. Right. If somebody steals my phone, they could probably get that Bitcoin. Right. That's so, whatever. But if you have serious amounts of money, you don't want to keep it on your phone, on a phone wallet. Right. Yeah.
I don't have serious amounts of money. I should still get a wallet.
Okay, well, I think that's
wrap
probably a spot to wrap up, and I don't know. Yeah, again, if you're listening and you have more questions, please ask. Right? There's no.
It doesn't
dumb
matter
questions.
how basic your questions are.
There's only dumb people asking questions. But
that's what I was
your
doing this
anonymity.
whole time, being a dumb guy asking questions.
No, but it's education, and I think this is Bitcoin. Somebody said code plus math equals truth, and Bitcoin represents truth. It is not the truth, but it's a good representation of what the truth should be. So I think as Christians, we strive towards that, and this is, to me, this is a great example of that. So I have no reservations about recommending Bitcoin to anybody.
Read up on it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, folks, for listening to this episode. And until next time,
Steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To learn more about the show, head on over to twostewards.ca and explore our free resources. To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We will see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.
Nailed it.